Genesis 43 continues the story of Joseph and his brothers during the famine in Egypt. Here is a summary of the chapter. Before we start, we'd like to ask for your support. If you enjoy our video, please hit the like button. This will help us reach more people and create content for you. Now let's get started with today's video. Genesis 43 verses 1 to 34, Joseph's brothers return to Egypt with Benjamin. This chapter continues the narrative of Joseph and his brothers during the time of famine, further developing the themes of reconciliation, providence, and the testing of character. The famine intensifies, verses 1 to 2. The opening verses remind us of the famine that had gripped both Egypt and Canaan. The family of Jacob, also known as Israel, had already gone to Egypt once to buy grain, but the food they had brought back had run out. Jacob tells his sons to return to Egypt and buy more food, for the famine shows no sign of ending. Jacob's sons are hesitant to return, knowing that there's a problem. They were warned by the Egyptian official, whom they still do not realize is their brother Joseph, not to return unless they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, with them. This request had been made during their previous visit, when Joseph tested them by accusing them of being spies and holding their brother Simeon as a hostage. Joseph demanded that they prove their honesty by returning with Benjamin, the only remaining full brother of Joseph, the son of Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife. Judah's plea and Jacob's reluctance, verses 3 to 10. Judah, one of the elder brothers, speaks up and reminds his father that they cannot go back without Benjamin. He tells Jacob that the Egyptian ruler had made it clear they would not be allowed to buy grain or even see the man's face unless they bring Benjamin. Jacob is still resistant, reluctant to let his youngest son leave, remembering the grief he suffered when he believed Joseph had been killed years earlier. Losing Benjamin would devastate him. However, the reality of the famine and the urgency of the situation forces Jacob to consider his options. Judah offers himself as a personal guarantee for Benjamin's safety. He assures his father that if anything happens to Benjamin, he will bear the blame forever. Judah's plea is a powerful act of leadership and responsibility, foreshadowing the role his tribe would play in the history of Israel, from which kings like David and, ultimately, Jesus, would come. Judah's promise, along with the pressure of their need for food, convinces Jacob. He finally agrees to send Benjamin to Egypt, although he does so with great anxiety and resignation, saying, "If I am bereaved, I am bereaved," verse 14. Jacob prays that God Almighty would grant them mercy before the Egyptian ruler so that their brother Simeon and Benjamin might return safely. The brothers return to Egypt with gifts, verses 11 to 14. Jacob, still a man of wisdom and foresight, instructs his sons to take a gift of the best products of the land: balm, honey, spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. He hopes these gifts will appease the Egyptian ruler and smooth their way during their audience with him. Furthermore, Jacob tells his sons to return the silver that had mysteriously appeared in their sacks after their last visit. He does not want them to be accused of theft. It's important to note here that Jacob's strategy is not merely one of diplomacy. His trust is ultimately in God's mercy. He knows that the situation is beyond his control, and he places his trust in God for the outcome. The meeting with Joseph, verses 15 to 25. When Joseph's brothers arrive in Egypt, they immediately present themselves to Joseph's steward, expressing their concern about the money they found in their sacks. They explain that they had no intention of keeping it and have brought it back along with additional money to buy more grain. The steward, however, reassures them, telling them that their God must have blessed them because he received the payment. The brothers are then invited to Joseph's house, which likely increases their unease. They are unsure what this invitation means and wonder if they are about to be accused of some wrongdoing. Their minds are filled with anxiety, not knowing Joseph's true intentions. Simeon released and the brothers brought to a banquet, verses 26 to 31. At Joseph's house, Simeon is brought out to join them, and the brothers prepare the gifts they have brought for Joseph. When Joseph arrives, they bow down before him. This moment is significant as it fulfills the dreams Joseph had as a young boy, in which his brothers bowed to him. They are still unaware that the Egyptian official is their long-lost brother. Joseph, still concealing his identity, inquires about their father. The mention of Jacob causes him deep emotional pain, and when he sees his younger brother Benjamin, whom he has not seen in many years, he is so overcome with emotion that he leaves the room to weep. After composing himself, Joseph returns to continue the interaction. Joseph's test and the feast, verses 32 to 34. Joseph continues to test his brothers. He seats them according to their birth order, a detail that amazes the brothers. How could this Egyptian official know the order of their birth? They don't realize that Joseph, as their brother, would naturally know. The meal that follows is also notable. The Egyptians did not eat with Hebrews, and so Joseph, his Egyptian attendants, and the brothers all dined separately. But what really stands out is the favoritism shown to Benjamin. Joseph gives Benjamin 5 times the amount of food that he gives to the others. This act is another test. Joseph wants to see how the brothers react to this favoritism, as it was their jealousy of him, the favored son, that had caused them to sell him into slavery years earlier. However, the brothers seem to accept this without any sign of resentment. The chapter ends with the brothers eating and drinking freely with Joseph, unaware of the grand revelation that is about to come in the next chapter. Themes and insights from Genesis 43. Several important themes can be drawn from this chapter. Providence. Throughout the story of Joseph, we see God's providence at work, even in difficult and seemingly hopeless situations. Joseph's trials and eventual rise to power are part of God's greater plan to preserve Jacob's family and ultimately the nation of Israel. Even as Jacob sends his sons to Egypt, he prays for God's mercy, recognizing that only God can truly protect them. Reconciliation. Genesis 43 continues the slow process of reconciliation between Joseph and his brothers. Although Joseph has not yet revealed himself, he is testing them to see if they have changed. The brothers, once filled with jealousy and hatred, are now different men. Judah's willingness to take responsibility for Benjamin's safety contrasts sharply with the brothers' earlier betrayal of Joseph. Responsibility and leadership. Judah emerges as a central figure in this chapter, offering to be a guarantor for Benjamin's safety. His leadership and willingness to bear the consequences if anything happens to Benjamin reflect a transformation in his character. This willingness to take responsibility foreshadows his future role as the forefather of the royal line of Israel, from which David and Jesus would come. Forgiveness and testing. Joseph's tests of his brothers serve a dual purpose. They allow him to see if his brothers have truly changed, and they also create a situation in which the brothers can reflect on their past actions. By showing favoritism to Benjamin, Joseph recreates the situation that had led to his betrayal. Their reaction, or lack of jealousy, suggests they have learned from their mistakes. God's mercy. Throughout the narrative, there is an underlying theme of God's mercy. Jacob prays that God Almighty would show mercy to his sons in Egypt, And the Egyptian steward even acknowledges that their God must have blessed them when he speaks of the silver in their sacks. The unfolding events are a reminder that God's hand is guiding the situation, even when the characters involved cannot see it. In conclusion, Genesis 43 is a pivotal chapter in the story of Joseph and his family. It highlights the complexities of forgiveness, reconciliation, and providence as Joseph tests his brothers, who are unaware of his true identity. The tension builds as the family inches closer to the moment of revelation and eventual reunion. Please subscribe my YouTube channel. I hope you like this video. Thank you.